Hello, and welcome to an adventure like no other. Far more than what you have known, there is something far more to be known than you can ever know. And it is all about you, the real you, your real awareness with your intuitive senses. You were never taught that the real you, your real awareness, is operating 5 bodies in cause and effect, restricting creation. You have been taught to think that you are only a one-dimensional human person, with a mind and emotions, and with a very short lifespan on this planet Earth. More than what your mind can grasp is your intuitive senses that can be opened to see beyond all your restrictions. You have always had an opening to see beyond what you have known, and this has been purposely kept from you, and this is where you have heard rumors and stories about your nightly dreams. Your so-called dreams is your opening to your intuitive senses that will allow you, the personal you, to excel beyond what you have previously known. Everyone has intuitive senses, and very few people take advantage of what is possible by recognizing something more than their mind can understand. Creation has its place for all of us, and then there is all life, which is far more than anything than what can become with creation. Everything we experience is necessary for us to survive with whatever we choose and decide our life to be. New Kevin Smith is the great witness to something more than what can be taught and learned in any school. It can be so that when anyone first listens to Kevin's intuitive side experiences, also known as real side experiences, from what their personal mind has known, Kevin's manner of expression will at first be rather different to comprehend. This is where this introduction and reading the new books and Facebook groups will help. Have fun deciding. Dwayne the Great Writer and Seer.
The real purpose is the recognition of the all is, the true everything reality that the real awareness that we each actually are is a part of. And as the real awareness recognizes the all is, so this becomes a greater recognition the is has then of its own endlessness. The mechanism by which this then can be achieved, that of is recognition, is to make available a reality that isn't that which the true reality is for the purposes of comparison. That as the is everything, so must be formulated that which isn't everything, and what isn't everything must be something, and through the creational simulators can parts or pieces of the everything be isolated and made available as a simulation. The consciousness as the engine room, which contains the parts and pieces, the ideas as created via the body vehicles, the thoughts and emotions, and effected from consciousness, will be the body vehicles which not only create the ideas, but have the mechanism to convert these ideas into a simulation we then experience. We have then our own self-generated and experienced computer game, in a sense. We are the experience and the experiencer. And now, through the isolation of parts and pieces of the isness whole, the ideas as contained and made available as a simulated experience, we have a viable means by which everything, the is, can be recognized by a comparison to that which it isn't, that being something, the isolated parts and pieces. That as we alternate between the two positions now available, the personal self of a consciousness created and isolated ideas, and the nowness of our real awareness, everything is position, eventual determination of the difference will be ours, the comparison that becomes as a recognition of the all is. The creational simulators and the secondary established personal self-position essential that this comparison could be possible, the unreal realities and the created self being utilized as the necessary tools they were intended for, that the real awareness can recognize the all-is it is a part of. As every isolated idea, simulated experience, physical level and real side are then the comparison viewpoints for is recognition, it makes sense then to be afforded as many viewpoint comparisons as possible. Generally, these will be afforded through our endless and varied lifetimes, but as we step up and set intent to recognize the is, so the real guides initiate a process where we have far more comparisons now made available through the real side experiences they provide. Essentially then, all experience, physical level and real side, is for this purpose ultimately, for our ears recognizing comparisons, as everything experienced in the simulators is that which the true reality is not, regardless of its nature, or that it is a guide provided. And we would best ensure that we retain our objective indifference to all experience, maintaining the recognition that all of it is a fabricated unreality. As I said, the more viewpoints we are afforded, the more comparative references we can utilize for is recognition, and many times we may have real side experiences where we are operating as completely alternative body types to our usual accustomed physical level forms, and regardless of the circumstances, if they are perhaps past lifetimes, or that we are viewing through the eyes of another consciousness-affected form, or are temporarily assuming an alternative body type for whatever reason we may be doing so, is all rather a secondary consideration to the primary purpose that all experience, including operating as alternative forms, provides, that of further viewpoint comparisons. And indeed, the explanations and evaluations we apply to our experiences are in actuality still further idea creations that again serve this singular purpose. Should we indeed create and apply a literal explanation, that of comparisons for is recognition? This real side experience would be one such example of operating as an alternative body form. I would find myself as far younger an age than my current physical level human form, for indeed I would be but a minor, of the age of 6 or 7 by my estimation, and be attending a school of a kind designed for my particular age group. Oftentimes, when we are operating as alternative forms during the experience, we may not always over-consider our appearances, especially if they are perhaps past lifetimes as an example, for we are accustomed to our body forms therefore, and tend not over-analyze their design, and only on waking do we ponder the form we had been. This would be the case here, and absent of reflective surfaces then, so I wouldn't be able to determine my facial features, but I appeared to be bipedal, my skin completely covered in a purple fur, a fur that was somewhat bristly, as opposed to soft, not to the extent of being spine-like, but as I looked down at my attire, as all students had a standard uniform, my rather bristly purple fur had penetrated through the soft material fabric of my top. I had the impression of my being a feline, a rather common expression of a body type in this simulator in fact, just one of a rather exotic fur coloration. I was exceptionally tall additionally, and dwarfed most of the other school children, who were an assortment of various body forms also. Some were somewhat indescribable, others were insect-like, some reptilian-based, bipedal animal forms, and so forth. Interestingly, those in the capacities of teachers were human in appearance, but this seemed an accepted situation by all featuring, for there would be one human female teacher addressing all the students and myself, as we gathered in a hall or other, and although at the time of the experience what she was presenting made perfect sense, as though I had the consciousness literal references available that allowed for comprehension of what the teacher was conveying on waking and evaluating the experience, so now the references no longer were at my fingertips, as I was resigned to the references present in my human form memory body, which didn't include or extend to alien schools. And so what was communicated by the teacher, and indeed all other students, was lost in translation, as it were. Overall, this seemed to just be another version of the indoctrination, literalization programming centers that are the schooling systems. Very likely, this model of control, a standard throughout multi-dimensional creation, where the controller-slave dynamic is in effect. And so it seemed a veritable assortment of juvenile body forms were being put through this same programming, including the purple feline I was operating as, by the hand of what seemed to be humans, though just as it is on Earth, the teachers may be a part of and represent the control systems, but are simply delivery mechanisms for it. They are not the source. Of all the varied student body forms, there was one that I had a close friendship with, of a body type that was among those impossible to describe, other than it was male, bipedal, and considerably shorter than myself. He also seemed very clumsy, not especially sure-footed, as they say, and I constantly had to be in a state of readiness to catch him should he stumble and fall. On the occasions I wasn't swift enough, so I would have to lift him from the ground and return him to a standing position, as though he had difficulty doing so himself. Perhaps a body type that took the years it did to be fully functional and until then lacked coordination. Every time I lifted him where he took a tumble, I would speak the only line that I retained on waking, that wasn't seemingly lost in translation from one consciousness, that of my alien feline form, to my human consciousness, that of, "On your feet, soldier." My friend and I would enter a recreational area amidst a number of other student body forms, and where being presented on a large wall-mounted screen was a kind of documentary, or perhaps their equivalent of a news broadcast. Again, what was being revealed made perfect sense during the experience, and where I was as this feline being. On waking, however, as I attempted to piece what I had seen together, using the references my human consciousness has available, so the best I could determine was that the news story would centre around how the adult body forms of the same array of assorted species as was present in the schools were testing out new harnesses for their pets. The imagery depicted beach scenes with the various bipedal, third, scaled, and insectoid body types walking what seemed to be versions of quadrupedal dogs, utilizing the new harnesses. From this, so it was deduced then that I was operating on a planet that comprised of this assortment of various bipedal animal forms. They had a similar overall structure to that which is the human experience. They had indoctrinating school systems in place, where humans seemed to be involved, and overall then this was another situation of a species control, and very likely under the subjugation of another expression of dark force reptilians. For indeed, I have shared on previous real side experiences the reality of the bipedal animal body type as a common simulator expression, and how they seem to coexist despite great variation in their appearances and design. Many of such species are stepping up and assisting with the galactic projects, the various feline species as a prime example, but many more are in just as controlled circumstances as humanity and the Earth, such as in this case here, and this planet seemed to boast a far richer diversity of body form variety that were coexisting, many of which were beyond description, as I said. During the news broadcast, I recall considering as to how fetching the harnesses were, and rather would like one for myself, although they were designed for the pets, so-called, but operating as a juvenile feline, so my considerations were not those that an adult would tend to generate. Interesting how the pets of that world were four-legged dogs, much as it is on the earth, and rather amusing to behold from the human perspective, that of, say, a two-legged cat walking a dog. While all this was taking place, present in the recreational room also would be a table placed along one wall, behind which would be seated 4 humans. These, however, were not further human teachers, for indeed, despite my operating as this feline in the school experience, impressions revealed the humans behind the table were invisible to all but myself, but were in actuality real guides. I would approach the table, the guides would regard me without word, as though they were monitoring all those featuring in this particular school, specifically the children. For indeed, the guides operate in creation unseen. They always are watching for those who indicate promise whereas recognizing is concerned, and at the pivotal moment, so they will make themselves known, and this seemed to be the situation here. The guides were preparing to approach the overall student body of the various body forms, but for the moment were in an observing capacity only, and unbeknownst to all present in the experience besides myself. There would be small piles of coins placed on the table also, one of which belonged to me, as impressions revealed. The acquisition of a coin on the real side, or other items of decided value, is representationally indicative of the awareness process. The guides will utilize that which is considered valuable for this representational purpose, the acquiring of such revealing escalating awareness, but every real side feature is of course according to a context. I'm uncertain who the other piles of coin belonged to, but very likely students of the school already embarking on their awareness process, and maybe their personal selves are oblivious of this at the current moment. For it takes the moments it will for the real awareness, having decided to recognize the ears, to get through to its personal self-creation. Very possibly then, this purple feline was another aspect or version as effected from my consciousness. As we all are multi-dimensional and operating within innumerable creational positions and body forms. I have shared on previous real side experiences some of my multi-dimensional aspects and that which they are involved in. Some are with the ears recognizing a program, so to speak, others lagging behind, and some are completely personal self-immersed, as though as yet to be brought up to speed. Ultimately, we must be absolute with our focus, should we intend to stand as the real beings of awareness light we already are, in the real universes of the ears, and this absoluteness of a focus, if attained, will reverberate throughout our multi-dimensional selves, as though all our aspects and body vehicles will be singing from the same song sheet. Until this complete focus is attained and absolute, our various aspects and vehicles will be somewhat scattered. For despite the seeming myriad of our multi-dimensional expression, it all stems from the same source, ourselves, or rather our intent and focus placement. And my final evaluation or viewpoint then is that this little purple furred feline child was another of my varied and assorted multi-dimensional aspects, living his respective dimensional life, and evidently as able to perceive the guides, and with his pile of coins, so he was one of my aspects on board with the process of awareness. And as impressions revealed, some of his fellow students were doing likewise. Other piles of coin were present, and that the guides were watching closely the progress of all the students, that very likely they were all preparing to step up and become more aware also, as is the real purpose of creation and all our lifetimes and expressions of simulated experience, as I mentioned earlier. But as I also said, all of this, everything occurring creationally, including my position as this feline, and indeed the viewpoint I applied, that of it being one of my aspects, is all but comparative reference by which the ears can be recognized. Hence the necessity of us being shown these various views in the first place. The more we are shown and experience, the more comparisons we have, regardless of the nature of the experience received.